Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the second and the final day of our international workshop, the Forensic Convergence, Blood and Bones. It was incredible to see the level of engagement during yesterday's session on blood spatter analysis. We saw how the liquid tissue of the body can reconstruct a crime scene through physics. But today, we move from the fluid to the firm, focusing on the elements that endure long after everything else have faded, bones and bite marks. Today's session is a deep dive into forensic anthropology and odontology. We will be exploring how the human skeleton acts as a biological resume, detailing a person's age, sex, ancestry, and even their life history. Beyond the bones, we will unlock the secrets of forensic ontology. In cases where DNA or fingerprints might be unavailable, dental records and bite mark analysis often become the gold standard for identification. We will be looking at how these unique dental fingerprints are analyzed and presented as critical evidence in real world case studies. But before this, we will be completing the last lecture's topic. Continuing with our esteemed speaker for the day, Ms. Ala ma'am, we will start today's session. Over to you, ma'am.
Hello, everyone. I hope that you're all doing well. Thank you so much for presenting me and for having me into this, these sessions. It's my pleasure. And I'm really happy that you guys are all engaging and loving the sessions. And I really hope that if you have any question, any doubt, to just, ask about it. So, as today, we are going to continue a small part of blood stain pattern analysis that we didn't have so much time to do it yesterday. So let me just share my screen. Can you please confirm if you can see my screen by mic?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
Yes,
thank you so much. Okay, so I believe that Mr. Swapnil has sent you to the group now a photo regarding the taxonomy that we talked about yesterday. What I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna prepare a small document that we will deliver it to you tomorrow so that you can have it as a reference when it comes to the BPA taxonomy and terminology, because I do believe that there's a lot of terms and that you can just use it as a reference whenever you want to check out the patterns and everything. So in today's session, we're going to talk more about the crime scene reconstruction in BPA. So basically, we're going to focus on how we move from observing the blood stains to estimate where they actually come from. So when the blood is first impacted, meaning when a force acts on it, it travels through the air before landing on a surface. And during this movement, it follows a predictable path influenced by the gravity and the direction, of course. So by carefully studying the shape of each stain and its directionality, especially the elongated shape and the tail, we can determine the direction of the blood. And once we have that, we move to the concept of area of convergence, which yesterday we said that it's a two-dimensional estimation of where the blood actually originated. So before we continue, I just want to share with you a small YouTube video showing, one second, okay, showing the bloodstain analysis when it comes to the area of convergence and the area of origin, so that you can understand what I'm talking about. Can you see the screen, guys, of the YouTube?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm gonna try to right now click on it. Tell me if you can hear also the sound or no. Can you hear it? Can you hear the sound of the video?
No, ma'am.
It's not audible, ma'am.
Okay, one second. Okay, I think Let's see. Can you hear it now?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, that's great. Let me put the captions.
After initial crime scene photography and documentation have been completed, the crime scene investigator places reference scales near the blood spatter and selects the individual stains for analysis. The investigator draws a line extending along the path, or length axis, of each selected stain. The area where these lines intersect is called the area of convergence, which indicates the approximate height of the incident that produced bloodshed. The examiner uses a loop to measure the length and width of each stain, and then calculates the angle at which the droplet impacted the surface. Once the investigator knows the area of convergence and impact angles for a group of stains, the stringing process begins. The investigator attaches one end of the string to each stain's location at the point where the blood drop contacted the surface. Then, using a protractor, pulls the string along the angle of impact and secures it to something stable. Once several strings are in place, the area of origin becomes visible. This complex, time-consuming process creates a three-dimensional model that indicates where the victim was located at the time of the event.
Okay. So, let me reshare my presentation now. Okay, so as you can see, guys, in the video, can you guys tell me what, like, maybe try to tell me what did you see in this video before, like, I explain? Can you hear me? Okay, so we have someone in the chat. Yes, exactly. So I actually found this video because I do believe when it comes to BPA, it's normal to, like, you know, to apply it on a crime scene so that you can understand it better. So this video showed that, first of all, we have this blood, like this blood droplet. First thing first, we should know the directionality. When I say directionality, I am talking about something that we use to trace blood back to its source. So when a drop of blood hits a surface, its shape actually tells us how it was traveling. So if the drop hits a perfect 90-degree angle, it forms a circular stain where the width and the length, they are equal. This is the like the width and the length, okay? They are equal. So this is at 90 degree. So there is basically no directional movement. But when the blood hits an angle, okay, the stain become more elongated. And this is where the directionality become more important. The pointed end, this one, okay, show us, it's called the tail, okay? It shows us the direction of the blood that was traveling. So once we identify the direction, like, so that we have this blood, okay? This is the tail, so direction of traveling is like this. Now, when I want to know the area of convergence, I have a lot of blood droplets on the wall, okay? I know that this direction is upwards. So when I wanna, like, know the area of convergence, I'm gonna draw these lines in the opposite direction of the direction of the blood. And where they all intersect, we call it the area of convergence. And this is exactly what is happening in this picture. So the direction is upward, okay? And then they drew these lines and they all intersected down there. So this is the area of convergence. Okay, now this slide basically shows how the shape of a blood stain changed depending on the angle of impact. Okay, so for example, when a blood strike at a surface 90 degree, you can see like it is 90 degree near, it is like a round shape. Okay, when as the angle decrease actually, for example, 80, 70, 60, the stain begin to like stretch slightly. Okay, and when the angle become even smaller, like 50, 30, 20, 10, okay, the stain becomes more elongated and the tail appear. And this tail shows us the directionality, which is in here, it is downward. Now, you also, in this video, saw something called the angle of impact. So the angle of impact is a key step in reconstructing where blood came from. So first thing first, we know the directionality. Then we trace like these lines to know the area of convergence. And now with the area of convergence and knowing the angle of impact, we can actually determine the area of origin. How is that? Okay, so simply we have some kind of equation that we can use. We know this is the length, okay? And this is the width. I'm gonna put it as a W. So imagine that I'm gonna say we have a length equal to 22 millimeters, and we have width equal to 9 millimeters. How do we know that? We actually measure it, like we take a ruler and we put it just in the middle. Okay, let's say the length is 22 and the width from the middle is 9 millimeter. We use a simple equation that we know. Basically, angle of impact is equal to of the width over the length. This is how we calculate it. Can someone do us the calculations? So basically it's sine, the reverse sine of 9 over 22. Can you give us like, what is the angle? If you have like a calculator. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So can someone just do us the math of this to know the angle of impact? Let me check. I think I have a calculator here. So we have 9 over 22, and then we're gonna have the, okay. Basically, it's gonna be around 24.15 degrees. Okay, this is how we calculate the angle of impact. Is everything clear when it comes to the angle of impact and how we calculate it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so after that, so we said that we have the angle of impact, we have the area of convergence. So now we're gonna talk about the area of origin, which is the 3-dimensional. In the video, you saw that they had the area of convergence and everything, and then they did the measurement of angle of impact, and you saw like they did the stringing method where they actually used the, using the, I don't know what is it called, like rapporteur, the one that we use in math for the angles, like for the degrees. They put it just on the middle of the blood stain, and then they used like some kind of strings and they attach it to it so that we can know where they actually intersect. Basically, this is the area of origin. I'm gonna send you this video also like on the group so that you can have it for your reference and double check it one time. Okay, so basically the area of origin is the 3-dimensional estimate of where the bloodshed actually occurred. After that, I have this small exercise, guys, that I need your help to solve it. So basically, we have crime scene investigators that they noted that this is the blood spatter that we have, okay, on the floor on the kitchen. And they drew the line, okay, of the convergence, and they measured the distance. The distance is 1.75 meters. Okay, after that, they measured the length and the width of the blood droplet, and they used the equation that we did just before, and they knew that the angle of impact is 27 degrees. So now the police want to determine the point of origin, the height. How can we calculate this? Basically, we can use a math equation in here. As you all know, like this is actually resemble to a triangle. We have the tangent of an angle is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. So we have the angle in here and we have the adjacent. We need to get the opposite. Can someone, give us like an answer for this? Can you guys do it? Oh, I can see that Garim already gave us the answer, 24.15. That's great. Thank you so much. I didn't saw that. Okay. So I will give you like about like 1 minute for you to tell me what do you think the height would be? And then we can see the answer. .89. Okay. Let's see. That's correct. 0.89 meters. So what we did is that we know that the tangent is the opposite over the adjacent, which is the height over the distance. So we know that the tangent of 27, we have it, like we have already the angle, and we have the adjacent, we need to get the opposite. So it's like, it's math. That's why when I said like BPA, we rely on math. This is how, because we're calculating heights, distances, and all of these stuff. And with doing this equation, you can get like the height is equal to the tangent 27 by 1.75, which is here. And then we get the height, which is 0.89 meters. Is everything clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So in this slide, guys, I have put something called methodology, which is essential for the work to be considered more scientific and reliable, because the main purpose of methodology is to like reduce the subjectivity, meaning we avoid actually to rely on personal opinions or guesses instead of following like a logical process. And without this structure, like for example, if we have two analysts like seeing these patterns, each one might look at the same blood stain and like have different conclusions, which basically weaken the credibility of the analysis and cannot be taken objective when it comes to the court. Okay, in the court, the evidence should be objective and defensible. So that's why BPA follow the scientific method, which is a systematic way of like, solving the problems. So it starts with a question leading to answer, and of course, having new questions as well. And there's another important point is that, simply collecting information is not actually enough. We should like observe the stains more and understand their meaning and do the analysis. Because as we said before, that BPA is interpreting patterns logically using the principles of biology, physics, and math in order to support like the conclusions that we get it. So in this slide, you can see I broke down step by step the methodology. First thing first, we identify the problem. Like, what do these stains tell us? Let's say that I see some red spots on the floor. I look at them. I want to know if this blood is from a dripping wound or someone was hitting the other. The second step is that I collect the data, meaning that I take photos, DNA, I do the sketches, I do the measurement and everything. So in my case, where these red spots are on the floor, I take close-up photos of the stains. I swab to check if they are human blood or not. I draw a sketch of where they are actually in the room. After that, I have to build hypotheses. So I have to build possible explanations to the presence of these blood drops. So I have two hypotheses here. Let's say the first one is that this blood is dripping from a wounded hand. Someone, let's say, cut his hand by mistake, and this blood is dripping from it. The second hypothesis is that some person punched the other on the face, so the blood sprayed on the floor. The fourth step is to make predictions. So I want to know if my idea is true. What should I actually see? So if this actually is blood dripping from someone who cut his hand, it's a wounded hand, what should I see? I should see round and near each other stains, because it's going to be due to gravity. You remember the passive drop that we talked about yesterday. But if it's a punch, then the stains are going to be more elongated and more spread out, because we talked about it yesterday when we said we have spatter patterns, and we said there are some things associated to punching, kicking, and stabbing. So basically, the stains are not going to be round, they're going to be more elongated and more spread out. After that, I should test and see, and by testing versus evidence, I mean I should compare what I am actually seeing with the hypothesis that I have had in my mind. So I check the stain shapes. If they are round, they should match the dripping, the first hypothesis, hypothesis A. But if they are elongated, okay, that means that they're gonna match my second hypothesis, which is that the blood comes from a punch to the face. In the conclusion, of course, we decide what actually fits best. And you should know that sometimes some results can be not, like, we cannot get these results, they are inconclusive. And by that, I mean that the stains can be unclear, they can be altered with, they can be smudged. So we're not gonna actually know the pattern of it or the shape of it. So it's okay to say like the result is inconclusive. You only describe what you're actually seeing. So in this slide, I have put like all of them in the same, like the workflow of a BPA at a crime scene. So first, we become familiar with the entire scene. It means we observe everything before we focus on the details in order to understand the overall context. Then we identify separate bloodstain patterns, because a scene can contain multiple events, and each pattern can be or must be analyzed maybe like individually. After that, we classify the patterns using the taxonomy that we talked about yesterday by grouping them into categories like passive, spatter, contact, or altered, and based on their characteristic using, of course, the shape of the stain and formation. Next, we evaluate the directionality of motion. We check the shape. We determine how the blood was traveling. And when we analyze the angles, the area of convergence and the area of origin, to estimate where the blood actually came from, like, you know, in the 2D and 3D dimensions, of course. After that, we should examine the relationship that happens between the blood stain and the other evidence. For example, the body, the environment, and to see how they actually connect. And we evaluate possible also source events, meaning we consider many explanations of how the pattern were created. As you saw, I just gave like two hypotheses. Sometimes you have a lot of hypotheses, and you should see which one match best with the actual evidence that you have, like in the crime scene. And finally, we define the best explanation of events based on all the evidence. Keep in mind that we don't only have blood at the crime scene that we can analyze, we also have other evidence like fingerprints, hair, fabric, anything else, like anything that you can find, objects related to the victim, anything. So also, one last point, I think, one last point in the methodology that we're gonna talk about is that it is applied depending on the type of the scene, because not all investigations happen under the same condition. We have something called active scenes, which are actually the scenes that's still intact and accessible. The analysts have the best opportunity in here for accurate analysis because they can actually observe the bloodstains directly in their original position. So they understand their places, the relationship between them, and they can help in the proper documentation and notice more important details that can actually be missed in the photos. Whereas in the released scenes, the analyst, they no longer has access to the original environment or the original scene, but they can rely entirely on the documentation, like the photographs, the sketches, the evidence log, the notes written by the technicians, which mean that the analysis in here is kind of limited by the quality and how the documentation is actually complete in here. And finally, in the cold case, the situation is actually similar to the released cases, but they are more challenging because the investigation is old. Okay, evidence can be incomplete, can be degraded, can be missing, and the scene itself no longer exists. So the same methodology is used in all cases, but the level of accuracy and detail actually depend on how much we have a direct access to the original scene. So is everything clear, guys?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So right now, actually, I'm gonna go to the case 2, which is much important right now. So this case, I myself did a project on it when I was in the university. So we had to choose, so we had this, I guess, some kind of options, and we had to choose one crime that happened, and we should explain each figure, what we actually see and the patterns that we see. So long story short, you can say that approximately 2 a.m., the police responded to the residence of a wealthy businessman with a report of someone that break in, and there was a serious injury. So this was reported by his 15-year-old daughter. The victim, as you can see in this picture, is a 45-year-old white male, and he was found in his bed in the master bedroom of his residence. And they said that it's a massive blunt trauma to the head. So his wife was actually wearing a nightshirt, and it was stained with blood and brain tissue. And she was questioned by the police, and she stated that she and her husband, they had gone to the bed at approximately 11:30 p.m. So right now we're gonna see in each figure. I don't know if you don't mind. We have some figures like this. Do you mind seeing these pictures, or it's okay? Because I believe some people don't like to see.
It's okay, ma'am.
Okay, great. So let me just, okay. Okay, so this is our first picture. In this picture, I'm gonna write down how we actually write when it comes to describing everything in BPA. So I know, or they said that this is a blunt force trauma to the head. So we know that the bones, they are damaged. What we can say when you see the accumulation of blood in here, it's a saturation pattern. And this also means that this is actually the final position of the victim that he had because, the blood is saturated. So the first pattern that we have is altered pattern due to natural process saturation. Okay, this is the first one. The second one, well, I know this is a blunt force trauma, so it's something related to punching, kicking, and stabbing. And based on the photo that we sent to the group to you, you can check that association with punching, kicking, and stabbing falls under the category of spatter patterns, impact pattern, associated associated with punching, kicking, and stabbing. Okay. This is basically how we write when it comes to BPA. Okay. Then in this picture, we can see like, the view of the victim showing areas of fracture like at his face. So we can see that. In this picture as well, we have the same, like what you actually see, you write the same thing when it comes to spatter patterns, pattern, etc. I'm not gonna write it another time. The same thing, like impact pattern associated with punching, kicking, and stabbing. But what do we actually see more in here? If you look at this, in here, we had this picture of when we see a blood and because of the gravity, it goes down. So this is called flow pattern. And you can see it under the category passive pattern, flow pattern. We also have something else that we should point it out. You do realize that we said yesterday, when it comes to impact pattern, we actually see the letter V, okay? Like when it comes, let's say someone is being hit right here. So we're gonna see a letter V that is forming out there, but it's not really shown because we have the pillow in here. Is everything clear up till now? Okay. Now, this is the victim. He's in here. We have this kind of wood thing, and above it, we have this. We have the mirror. Right now, we're going to analyze what we actually see in these two pictures. In the first one, A. So I said that there are some blows that struck while the victim was in the final position. And this one, when we said there are some, you remember we said there's something, the low, medium, and high velocity. And we said when it comes to medium velocity, it's more related to the things related to punching, kicking, and stabbing. So in here, we have medium velocity spatter patterns, impact pattern associated with punching, kicking, and stabbing. Associated. I know it might be like for the first time, you might look at it and say it's too much, but when you actually know more about these patterns and when you look into more case studies, you're gonna know that they are very easy to spot when it comes to when you're seeing the shapes of them, of the blood droplets. Like we said, medium velocity, they are less than 4 millimeters. And obviously they can be done because we had this impact pattern, which is the punching or the blunt force trauma that appeared. So of course, we're gonna have these things. So, and also what we can see in here, because of the blood, we can also see this as well, which is the same as the first one, passive pattern, flow pattern. Okay, the flow pattern, like we had these droplets, and because of the gravity, they made this flow thing. So now in picture B, so I have blood stains that are present on the shelf in here, okay, under the mirror. So because of the blood, let's say particles that flew in the air in a projectile manner, if I want to say, because he's in here and then we have blood in here, they reached the shelf surface without hitting the mirror. Okay, so we have some things in here and they didn't reach the mirror. So that means, or we have another like something that we can think about, that the position of the victim could have been changed. Okay, because it means that the first blow might not have been in the last position appearing in the picture. Because you see, like if he is in here and we have so many blood, we have a lot of blood droplets on the shelf that couldn't appear in like in their direction and in their shape if the victim was like hit from the first in this position, in his resting or final position. So when we look at this two picture, in addition to this one, you can see that we have some kind of a V shape on the headboard, okay, that continue upward to the, in here, we have the mirror, let's say, so it is like that. This is the V shape. Okay. Is everything clear until now? Would you like me to repeat anything? Okay. So in this figure, what we can see is that this is the like the victim is like right there. This is the other side, like the side of the wife. Okay, so we can see that we have some expiration. This is the expiration pattern. It's not actually very well shown because of the quality of the pictures, but you know, as expiration, they should like these are the ones coming out from because of coughing, sneezing, or anything else. Like it's related to the respiratory system. So we can see that we have these expiration pattern, and we see as well transfer pattern, like some kind of a hand in here. Okay, this is a transfer pattern, more like a swipe. And also, you can see that we have as well transfer patterns to the left and right hand print. Can you see this? Okay, and these prints, they are not like created likely by the victim, of course, because like from the first hit, I do believe the victim was already gone. So looking at these images, this show that the wall actually on the cushion against it, let me, okay, hold on. Okay, so we talked about these two pictures. Now we have this one. Okay, look at this picture as well. In here, you can see some kind of more of a contact pattern, more like maybe a swipe. There's a large volume of blood. The picture was taken like very far, so we cannot actually tell, but we can tell that there is a volume, a large volume of blood. Okay, so what does that tell us? We can't still say anything when we are looking at that. We should also see the whole thing as well. So right now we look at this. This is actually, let me show you, this is here. You see this pillow? So we are seeing right now like this. So the victim, we know that he was hit very like multiple times. And of course, there are spatter patterns. And as we said, impact pattern that are associated with the punching. So when I see these images, let's say the victim was hit in this position. Okay, so we have the V shape in here. So why do I have the V shape present in here as well? So when I look at it, I can actually see a V shape that can be observed. And I can see like the elongated, you see this? The elongated round shape of stains, which basically prove that it's also spatter impact pattern that are associated with punching, kicking, or stabbing. And we can see also the same thing, flow pattern, which is passive pattern, flow pattern. As I said, we write it in the same way. So now when I look at the cushion, I take a close view to it. I can see also some blood stains on it. But I want to know, was this cushion actually there against the wall when the crime occurred or after the crime was occurred? So they removed the pillow and they could see like the white wall, it's so clean. Basically, what is this? This is void. You do remember, like we said, we can have a void pattern. So it actually proved that the cushion was against the wall and it was like placed like this at the time of the offense. After that, they took a look to the ceiling. So what we actually see, you do remember yesterday we said that when we have like someone with a hammer and they are striking someone, this kind of motion can create cast-off patterns. And this is exactly what we see. It's on the ceiling because of the blunt force trauma, because of the punching or with this object, we can see these appearing horizontal and vertical in the ceiling. Now we look at the nightshirt that was worn by the wife. It actually shows what? It shows transfer pattern, okay, when we see it, barely cast-off pattern. You do remember also when we talked yesterday about cast-off pattern, we said that most likely the person who's punching the other one, when it comes with a hammer, for example, wouldn't have much blood as much as the person sitting next to the victim. So basically, as the wife was like near her husband, she should have had more cast-off pattern on her nightshirt. It's barely there. You can see this. It's barely there when it comes to like close-up. They did a very close-up to see some and very little of like cast-off blood stains. It was more of, you know, a transfer pattern and like, yeah, basically more of transfer pattern, no saturation. So more like transfer pattern. So when I see this, what can I say? So the first picture I saw, I said that we have a V shape in here. And we then said that we have a V shape in here. And you can tell that, what is this? Maybe his hand was in here. And when he was moved in the other, like in this final position, his hand become in here. So what we can conclude is that this is not the initial position of the victim. Okay, and based on the quantity and like the analysis that they did of the bloodstain patterns they found in this, like in this thing, they could say that there was a minimum 3 hit in the final position. So they actually, the person or the perpetrator hit the victim in another position other than this, maybe 2 to 3 times. And then when he was in this position, he was hit at least 3 times. So what we have in here, so the wife said that she was sleeping next to him. And here I think I made a mistake. I'm supposed to say he was hit from his side, okay? But you can see, she said that, but you can see that there is no void on the vacant because basically, guys, if she was sleeping, let me see, I think I have a photo of the bed alone. Okay, if she was sleeping next to him in here, okay, she should, like, all the blood should have come to her, some cast off, and we should see a void, like where she was sleeping. So we couldn't see a void and on her side and on like the wall. And her night t-shirt doesn't have, as we said, spatter patterns, which are should be present when it comes to the hitting of the person next to her. So what happened is that she said, like, the statement basically, she said that she was asleep with her husband and she was awakened by some noise, and she thought that the dog was jumping up and down on the bed, and she then observed like a person that she couldn't identify standing like over her husband, and he is striking him on the side of the bed where he actually was asleep. So this person who is identified, he came to her and he held her down, and then like he pushed her, like pushed a pillow over her face, and like he punched her on the stomach, and then he left. So, and when she saw like her husband was very hurt, she rushed to the room to check her daughter's bedroom to check on her if she's okay, and then they called the 911. So based on everything that the BPA did, the physical evidence proved that the wife's testimony is so wrong, and this helped to establish a valid hypothesis that was presented to the criminal court. So the police investigation, they indicated that, first of all, there was no forced entry in the house, okay? And there was nothing missing, like no valuable is missing, no money or jewelry or anything. The stepson of the victim, okay, and his girlfriend were also questioned. So the girlfriend actually gave a statement. She was at the home at that point, that night of the homicide, and she saw the stepson coming out of the bedroom having this sledgehammer, okay, in his hand. And she admitted that she assisted him with the disposal of of removing like what he was wearing and everything in several dumpsters on the street. So after that, the girlfriend led the police to a river where they actually found the hammer, and they recovered the weapon, which was like on the river bottom. So the head of the hammer, as you can see in here, it was wrapped in foil and cloth and secured in a plastic bag, which appear, as you can see in here. So, but there was actually some blood that are trapped in the plastic bag for DNA, which was good. So they did run the tests, and it actually matched the victim's blood. So with the police investigation and everything, it all revealed that the wife and the victim were actually in a divorce settlement agreement before he dies or before he was killed. And there was a large insurance policy which lists the wife as the one who benefits when he dies. So this was their motive for the homicide. So of course, like BPA in here assisted a strong hypothesis, and the judge came with a final verdict, and they were like, admitted to court and also like in prison. I'm not gonna go into detail with the court and everything because I don't think that we have much of time. So basically that was what actually happened. So do you guys have any question when it comes to the BPA before we jump into the anthropology? Is everything clear regarding this case? Okay. Let me just share with you now the other session. Why can't I share it? Okay, I'm gonna share my entire screen. Can you guys see the screen? If someone can please open the mic because I can see the chat.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's great. So We have, right now, we're going to talk about the role of bones in forensic anthropology, and I have included some few slides when it comes to bite marks as well, so that we can have an idea about it. So this is the table of content of this session. We're gonna first know the definition of forensic anthropology. We're gonna have an idea about a human skeleton and bones just to refresh your mind regarding it, because we're actually gonna use these bones to determine the sex, the age, the stature, and the ancestry of the people or that has these remainings. And in the last of the session, we're gonna have some slides regarding bite marks. So first thing first, can you guys tell me, please open the mic because I cannot see the chat. Can you guys tell me what do you think that forensic anthropology or basically the bones can tell us about a person?
About their height,
Okay,
whether they are female,
Mom, the
whether they are
gender.
female or male.
okay,
Age.
great.
To determine age and sex.
That's great. So
Their race.
okay, so as you said, guys, we can know the gender, the sex, the age, the height, the health, the lifestyle, and the ancestry. How is that? First of all, what is forensic anthropology? It's a branch of physical anthropology that applies the study of the human skeleton in order to solve legal and criminal cases. So it's the science of studying bones to identify who a person was and what actually happened to them. Basically, forensic anthropologists, they are these specialists who analyze, as we said, the skeletal remains when bodies are burned, decomposed, or buried, or maybe even incomplete. So when we actually have, like, we don't have access to fingerprints or facial recognition that are possible, we can, use forensic anthropology in this. So they can tell us if, first, is this a human bone or not? Is this a male or a female? How old was the person when they died? How tall were they? Are there actually some signs of injury, diseases, or violence present on the bone? Because we can always see that. Now, when do we actually need forensic anthropologists? There are some cases that we need them to interfere. First, some criminal cases like the murder victims, they are buried or hidden for a long time ago. In mass disasters where we have explosions, floods, or fires, in war zones and genocide, when we find these mass graves, for example, and we need to identify the victims, and also missing persons, because sometimes we find some skeletal remains that are discovered after years. So we go back and check who are the missing persons in here so that we know them. When we have a natural disasters like tsunami, earthquake, wildfires, basically the soft tissues, they are destroyed, so we have to use the bones to get to know them. Okay, well, what is this? Why is this not going? 1 second. Okay. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
ma'am.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yes,
yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay, great. So right now, we're gonna talk a bit about the human skeleton before we deep dive into the bones, because we should know and like, to refresh your memory about the bones and everything. So you know that our skeleton is the body's framework, and it actually gives shape, support, and protection. And it actually allows us to move. So the adult, we know he has 206 bones, and they are divided into two. We have the axial skeleton and the appendicular. The axial is the one that it has the body's central core, like the skull, the ribs, and the spine. And when it comes to appendicular skeleton, we're talking about arms, legs, and the pelvis, which are basically more responsible for the movement. And as for the functions of bones, we know they serve to support, like it's the framework to the body. They help in the movement because the muscles, they actually pull on the bones to move. They also provide protection. For example, the skull protect the brain, the ribs, sorry, they protect the heart and the lungs. And they also help in the blood production when we're talking about the bone marrow that actually make blood cells. And of course, they have mineral storage, especially for calcium and phosphorus. Now, you should know that a bone are made of two main tissues. We know we have the compact or cortical bone and the cancellous or spongy bone. So basically, the compact bone is dense and it gives more the strength and the protection. The spongy bone is more porous, okay, is more porous and in the inner layer, and they like reduce the weight and contain the bone marrow. We have different types of bones in the human body depending on the shape and the function, of course. Starting with long bones, basically they are long, they have a shaft and an end, they support in the movement. And for example, we have the humerus, the femur, the humerus, the femur, these are long bones, okay? Then we have short bones. Short bones, they are cube-like and they are spongy inside, like the carpals in here, as you can see, and the tarsals in like, the feet. We have something called the flat bones, which are thin and flat, like the skull, okay? Also like the ribs and the scapula. We have also something called irregular bones. These has complex shape, but their main like function is basically to protect the organs and the muscles. Like for example, the pelvis, it's irregular. The spine is also, the vertebra, sorry, is also irregular bone, this one. We also have something called sesamoid bones. Basically, these ones, they are small, round, just like this, the patella. And finally, the sutural bone. These one are very tiny extra bones in the skull. They don't have actually like a function or anything. They are more used for diagnosing some diseases, I guess, or anything that can happen in there. And they are like between the sutures. Now, if I actually arrive at a scene and there was some remains that may be bones, first thing first, I should know if it's actually a bone or not, if it's human or not, and if I can notice any sign of trauma or diseases. And then when I do all of that, I can do the biological profile, which is knowing the sex, the age, the height, and the ancestry. So how can I know actually if this is a bone or not? Not everything that looks like a bone is actually a bone, guys. Sometimes it can be wood, stone, or even plastic. So the first step is to confirm if it's a bone. Well, there are some visual differences that I can look at. For example, the color. Fresh human bones, they are yellowish, white, because they have this organic material and marrow. Old ones, they can be more to brown or gray. As for the texture, we know that real bones, they are porous and they are rough. They're not glassy. However, when we see like a plastic or stone, they are more hard. As for the shape, of course, we know that human bones, they have specific shapes. As we saw in the slides before, there are some specific shapes to, like, the femur, the ribs, and everything. But to confirm, like to be sure of everything, we should do chemical confirmation, which basically scientists test for calcium and phosphate, which are the main minerals in the bone. And this is done where actually they scrap a sample and check its chemical reaction. If the calcium is present, then it's a bone. If not, it could be plastic or maybe some kind of a rock. We can also check if there's, like in the surroundings, if we found a jeans, if we found a wallet next to the victim, or anything that can actually belong to this person. Now, once we confirm that this is a bone, I should ask myself, is this a human or animal? Because sometimes animal bones, especially pig, deer, or like dog, they look very similar to human ones. So we look for clues in shape, in proportion, and in texture. And there are some things that we actually look for, starting with the shape and proportion first in here, as you can see. We have the poster. For humans, the legs and the arms, they are proportionate, okay, and they walk upright. But for animals, the legs are longer in back, and they walk on 4 legs. I can also check the pelvis in here and in here. So the pelvis of human, they are wide, but for animals, it's long and more narrow. If I also see long bones, okay, these are the long bones. For human, they are straight and they are more balanced. For animals, they are more like curved, because, like animals, they run and jump and all of that. I also can see like the skull. If I look at the skull in here, for humans, it's rounded and large, okay? But for animals, it's more like elongated. You can see that, and more flat. And as for the, if I wanna say, I think in here, yes, the teeth. For the human, they are smaller, and the jaw is more of a V shape and also small. For animals, they have these larger cannons for, like, because they tear the meat, and they have more of a long jaw, as you can see. Also, the limb bones. Humans, they have longer legs than arms, but animals, they are often the opposite of it. Also, I can check the vertebral column. Human, they have spine that is S-shaped for like the upright posture. Animals, their spine is more like horizontal, if I can say. In the pelvic bone, we already said that the pelvis for human is more wide. The animals, they have more narrow one. As for the feet, you can already see humans have arched feet. Animals have more of a paws or, hooves. And the ribs as well. Humans have more circular, as you can see, rib cage. The animals, they have more of elongated chest, so it's more elongated. And of course, I can check the bone texture. Okay, as you can see in here in the picture, when it comes to human, the thickness of the bone, it's more spongy on the inside. However, for the animals, it's more dense. And as for the bone marrow, human have more red marrow, which actually make the red and white blood cells and the platelets. For the animals, they have more yellow or fatty marrow, which is mostly fat, and it is that can convert to red marrow when it is needed. Okay. So now, after I check that this is actually a bone and this is a human bone, now I can check if there are some signs of trauma or diseases that can be shown. For example, someone who was shot in the head, okay, I can see in here like the round hole or the radiating cracks. okay, on the skull. So bones can tell us stories not only about who the person was, but also about what could have happened to them. Also, like other things like the injuries before or at death, we can also know that. So when I say like trauma, I mean a fracture, I mean a sharp cut, I mean a gunshot. And keep in mind that we also can tell, as I said, if this happened before death or at death. For example, like in here, okay, a sharp cut. We see a straight and clean like mark from, for example, a knife. What can it can actually tell us? It can actually tell us that this can suggest a stabbing, a cutting, or something else related to this kind of thing. This one, the cranial thing in here. So I can see cracks from hit maybe or fall. This can tell us, when it comes to forensic and investigation, that someone was beaten or there was an accident or there was a heavy impact, most probably blunt force. In here, we can see gunshot marks. We see these round holes or star-like sometimes cracks. We can tell which is the entry and exit wound, which help us to actually reconstruct the events as well. Also, at the same time, we can also know if there's any disease like infections, bone cancer, malnutrition, by also checking the texture, the holes, and the appearance that we have. Honestly, I'm not going to deep dive into them since we don't have a lot of time, but you can guys check all of these that I wrote because it's basically more related to the part of anthropology when it comes to the medicine more, so that you should know more about the diseases or the health conditions and how they can actually appear on the bones. Is everything clear until now, guys?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So right now, this is like the most important part where it starts, because right now we're gonna talk more about the biological profile of a person. And I mean by that, the sex determination, the age determination, the stature, and the ancestry. So first thing is the sex determination from the remains. So the gender, is it male or female? Well, you know, when forensic anthropologists find skeletal remains, one of the first thing that we should know is this person is a male or a female. And we call this process the sex determination, and it helps us actually to narrow down the identity of the individual right from the start. So we basically use two main types of traits. We have the non-metric that we're gonna talk about right now. It's basically based on the appearance and the shape, what we actually see. And we have the metric one, which is the measurement and the size when we measure the bones and everything. Now, if I could only choose one bone to tell us whether the person was male or female, I choose the pelvis because it's the most accurate, giving around, I can say, 95% certainty. Why is that? Because the pelvis is shaped by one main biological difference, which is the childbirth. The female pelvis is adapted to allow a baby to pass through. So it's wider, it's more round, and it's more open. As you can see in this picture, it's wide, it's more open. However, the male pelvis is more of like narrower and taller. So if I want to start as the overall shape, you can look in here. It's circular, it's wide. In male, it's narrow like a heart shape. Okay? In the same picture, I can see another feature, which is the sacrum. This is the sacrum, guys. The sacrum is the large triangular bone at the base of the spine that actually connect the two sides of the pelvis. So in female, you can see it's shorter and it's more wide, and it's more like it tilts backward because, you know, because of the birth canal. In here, it's longer and more narrow, and it curves into like, you know, like inward, like in here to the pelvic cavity. Look at this. You can see it in here also. This is for a female. This is for a male. How wide is it? Also the sacrum. Look at the difference. This one is tilting inward. This one is more outward because of the birth canal. At the same time, we have something called the pubic arc, which is basically, this is the angle that forms just below where the two pubic bone meet in the front, like this one. Okay, you can see in female, it's wide and it's more open. It's like the letter U. For the males, it's more like the letter V. You can see it also in here. It's a close-up photo of it. This is for a female, this is for a male. So this is more like a U, this is more like a V. You can see how wide is it in here. Here is it is more narrow. Then we have something called the ventral arc and the subpubic concavity. I'm going to start with this one. So, you know, when it comes to the subpubic cavity in here, you can see for females, okay, in here, the bone is more curved, like for the inside. For the male, it is more of like straight and thick. And also in here, look, it is thick for the male. For the female, it's more like they have this thin edges, if I want to say. And as for the ventral arc, it is actually the small ridge or curve, like as you can see on the front in here of the pubic bone. In female, we can actually see the ventral arc. In male, it is absent or flat. And why is this matter? Because it's one of the best visual indicators and it's so easy to spot when you hold a bone, okay? Because females, they have more noticeable arc that males don't. So it is absent in here and is present in the female. And we have something also called the greater sciatic notch, which is basically if you flip the pelvis on the side, okay, this is the pelvis in here, okay, we flip it on the side in here, okay? There's this large notch between these two. So for the female, it's wide and open. For the male, it's narrow and deep. So just to make sure that you guys got everything, I need you please to tell me, what do you think the this pelvis, is it a male or a female?
Male.
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 Okay.
Male.
Excellent, guys. This is a male. And B?
Female.
Female. Okay, excellent. So if we place these two like near each other, side by side, we can see that the female pelvis is short, is wide and more open. The male one is tall and narrow and more closed in. Okay, and you can also see this is the sacrum. You can also see the ventral mark in here, everything that we basically talked about when it comes to the pelvis. Now, if the pelvis, let's say, isn't available, the skull is our next best tool for determining sex, because the skull has so many clues, and male and female skulls, they differ in size, in shape, and roughness because of the, you know, the muscle attachment and the hormones as well. So if I want to talk about the general appearance first, I can say that male skulls, they are usually more larger. They are larger, they are more heavy, and they are more rugged because the bone surface looks rough. We have like a strong neck and face muscles that are attached to it. So, and the features, they are more bold, okay? However, female skulls, they are more, if I can say, smooth, more delicate, they are smaller. Okay, and they more have like round surface. As you can see, like we have more of a round things in here, so that we're gonna talk about. Now, we're gonna have some cranial observations, some factors or some things that we actually are going to look at and examine when it comes to the skull. And here are these things. We have the nostril crest, mastoid process, supraorbital margin, supraorbital ridge, and the mental eminence. And now we're gonna break down each one of them and talk about it. And also we have the zygomatic arc. First thing, we're gonna start with the nostril crest. The nostril crest, guys, as you can see, it's in here, okay? Right in here. It's where the neck muscle attached right at the back of the skull, okay? So in males, as you can see, it's more rough, it's bumpy, and it's more pronounced. And that's mainly because men have usually stronger neck muscles that are pulling on that bone. For female, okay, it's more smooth, it's flatter, and there's no like barely visible, bump or ridge. This when it comes to the nostril crest. Then we have something that we call the mastoid process. The mastoid process is basically the small bone projection right behind the ear, okay? It's where neck muscles attach in here, as you can see this. So in males, look at this. The mastoid process is large, thick, and it projects like, outward for like out. In females, it's more thin, it's smaller, and it's barely obvious, like we can barely see it. Okay, look in here also to see the difference. This is the male one, this is the female one. Now we have something called the supraorbital margin and the glabella as well. No, that's not, sorry, I made a mistake. This is only the supraorbital margin, which is the upper edge of the eye socket. So this is like the sharp edge of the bone, like just above the eyes. If you run your fingers along your eyebrows right now, like the eyebrow ridge, that's where it is actually. So you can see like in female, it's sharp and thin and clear, whereas for males, it's more like, thick and more round and blunt. Now we're going to talk about the glabella and the supraorbital ridge, which basically the glabella is the smooth area between the eyebrows, okay? And the supraorbital ridge is the ridge just above the eyes. As you can see, in male, it's more pronounced and it is projecting like forward, but for female, it's smooth and more like, flat. You can see the difference in here. This is for female, this is for a male. We have also the mental eminence and the mandible shape, which is the chin and the jaw. So, the mandible or these jaw things, they tell us a lot about this because it's one of the most noticeable sex indicator in the skull. Because the male, the chin, the mental eminence is very square, as you can see in here. It's more square and prominent. It's almost like it's giving like a 90-degree, In female, it's more like, if I want to say more pointed, more round, maybe, and like the jawline is more soft. You can also see the difference in here. Finally, we have the zygomatic arc. The zygomatic arc is basically the cheekbones, okay? They form your cheekbone. It extends from like under the eye to the side of the face. Basically, you can say that males, they have it more thick, it's thicker, it's stronger, and it's more outward. In female, it's more, it's smaller and it's more smooth. Okay, so right now, in a simple word, I want to tell you guys, if you find a skull and you want to estimate sex, you should know a male skull is bigger, heavier, and rougher. It has strong features like a square chin and large mastoid. A female skull is smaller, it's smoother and more rounded, and with a very delicate chin. It's not that it's not square as the male one, and they has less pronounced muscles. And why is that? Because we know that males generally they develop thicker bones areas because of the great muscle use they have and the hormonal influence. But females they maintain this smoother like shape, if I want to say, to less bone reinforcement. And it's very important to remember, guys, that not every skull will fit perfectly into the male or female category because, you know, there are some exceptions. There are some females that may show stronger and more masculine features. Like, for example, they're going to have a larger mastoid process. And there are some males that may have softer or more delicate traits. And that's because there's, you know, a natural range of variation among humans. And things like genetics, hormones, and muscle use, they can also influence how the bone develop. So when we look at a skull, we don't just check one feature and decide. We look at all of them together. So you see, I gave you like 6 factors. I gave you 6 things that you can look at. You don't just look at the mastoid process and conclude, oh, this is a male or a female. No, we look at all of them together. The overall pattern tell us the most accurate result. Now, between these 2 pictures, can you guys tell me which one belonged to a male and which one belonged to a female?
A is female.
Okay. Who else is gonna answer us?
A is female and B is male.
Okay. That's correct, guys. A is female and B is a male. Because as you can see, like you can see the difference in here for the mastoid process, the mandible thing, the supraorbital, and also the zygomatic arc. So there's basically you can tell from also how large this one looks compared to the female one. So now that we actually check the non-metric traits, as we said, that non-metric is basically what we see. Now let's check the metric trait that help us know the sex. So when I say metric, I'm talking about things that we can measure, and these rely on numbers and precise instrument to estimate whether the bones belong to a male or a female. So why basically we use metric traits? Because, you know, in some cases we don't have a complete pelvis or skull. Sometimes the bones can be broken or burned or very like too old, and we cannot exactly like examine them. So measuring give us objective data, and these numbers we can compare to like, you know, a known average. So what we actually use is that, first of all, we use the osteometric board, which is a flat measuring device for long bones, like the femur or humerus. We also have a spreading caliper, which basically measure the curved parts, like the skull or the clavicle. We also have the sliding caliper, which is for smaller and more detailed measurement, like, for example, head diameters. And of course, these measurements, they are compared with known male and female average using some formulas, because we have already a data that is in our system, let's say, and these measurements that we're gonna make, we're gonna compare them to the data that we have so that we can, you know, use some equations and get to the results. So what do we actually measure? We basically start with measuring we do cranial measurements. So as you see, that male actually They have larger, longer, and broader skulls, as we said, and for females, they are more small and rounder skulls. For clavicle or collarbone, this is the clavicle in here that I have been mentioning. For the clavicle, basically, the male clavicles are longer and thicker and they are more curved. And for the females, they are shorter and thinner and less curved. And we also have the sternum. This is the sternum in here. For the sternum, for males, it's long and heavy. And for females, it's shorter sternum. And then we had to look into the long bones like humerus, femur, and other bones like tibia, radius, ulna. But what we look at is, this is the humerus, okay? We'll look at the humeral head in here. This is the humeral head. For males, it's large and thick because of the greater muscle attachment. For female, it's smaller, smooth, and it's lighter. It's the same thing when it comes to the femoral head of like the one in here. Okay, the same thing. For males, it's larger and thick. For female, it's smaller and lighter, as well as the other long bones that we check. Now, our results, are they accurate? It actually depends on which bone we are actually working with. For example, if we use the pelvis, it's 95% accuracy, but let's keep in mind that sometimes it cannot be like complete. And so we're gonna have to use other bones as well. So if we have the skull or the sternum or any long bone, we can also use it. So the more that the bones are incomplete, the more the accuracy decrease. And as for children, we can still determine the sex, but it's hard, especially when they still lack this, sexual dimorphism. Now, is everything clear, guys, before we move to the age?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So now that we know that these remains are for a male or a female, let's now try to detect the age. So we will see right now the one related to sub-adults or under 18 and the ones related to the adults. And keep in mind that we can never know the exact age. We only have like an age range. This is because people grow at slightly different speeds, but the bones still give us like these clear values or these clear, clues. Before we deep dive into it, I would like to give you like a small refresh for your memory when it comes to the cranium or the skull, because we're going to use it into the age determination. So as you know that the cranium is the big rounded part of the skull that protects the brain. It is actually made of 8 bones: the frontal, 2 parietal, 2 temporal, the occipital, sphenoid, and ethmoid. And these bones, they are all joined together by the sutures, which are these zigzag lines that act like some kind of a stitches. Okay, so you can imagine like the skull like a puzzle made of 8 big pieces, and the sutures are the lines where the pieces meet. So these sutures, you should know that they start open in babies and then they slowly close as we grow, which is why they are useful for age estimation. So now let's get to know more about how we determine age, starting with the sub-adults or the one under 18. For children and teenagers, age estimation is actually much easier because their bones and teeth grow in very predictable stages. So we have 3 main indicators. We're gonna start first with the dentition, which is the most reliable method. Teeth are the best indicator of age in children because they always grow in the same order and at the same time, even before birth. Why is that? Because we know baby teeth and adult teeth, they appear or erupt at specific ages. Also, they are not actually affected by nutrition or health, like the root formation. And they also give accurate results, especially from birth to teenage years. In here, you can see the Atlas of Human Tooth Development and Eruption chart. This chart actually shows how human teeth form and appear from before birth until early adulthood. Okay, So starting with, we have in here, before birth, 30 to 38 weeks in here. Teeth start to form inside the gum. Okay, what does that mean? It means that the baby was still a newborn or in utero, like it's before birth. From birth till 2.5 years in here. The baby teeth start to appear. So the first teeth actually appear around 6 months, and by 2 to 3 years, they are all visible. So in forensics, we can say that the presence of baby teeth can indicate that the child is under 3 years old. Now, when the baby teeth are fully erupted, they are all appeared, and permanent teeth start to form. Now we're talking about a childhood. It's between 3 years and 6 years. So in forensics, we can say that these teeth inside bone show the child is still growing. It's from 3 to 6 years. Now, when both baby and adult teeth are present, we call this stage the mixed stage. You know, some permanent teeth, they start to erupt around the 6 years, and like by 12 years, they are all in place except of the wisdom one. So basically, when I see small baby roots and large adult teeth are visible, we're talking about a child who's between 6 and 12 years old in here. And when I say more of like all permanent teeth are present and wisdom teeth start to form around like 16 years and they are formed totally like all erupted by 21 years, I can say that this person is a teen or a young adult. To make it more easier for you, I have put this table so that you know at each stage what teeth appear and the approximate age range. So before birth, we have these tooth buds inside the gum. It means that 30 to 38 weeks in utero. When baby teeth appear, we're talking about 6 months to 2.5 years, or you can say under 3 years. When the full baby teeth are all appearing, we're talking about a person who is between 3 and 6 years. When we have the mixed stage, when we have baby and adult teeth together, we're talking about someone who is between 6 and 12 years. And when all of the adult teeth are there, the permanent teeth are there, except the wisdom teeth, we're talking about a person who's between 12 and 16 years. And finally, when the wisdom teeth develop, we're talking about a teenager between 17 and 21 years. Now, I have this small activity with you guys that I would like to do. So if we see only baby teeth, based on what you just remember, does that mean that the child is under 6, it's 6 to 12 years old, or it's an adult?
Option A.
Great, excellent. Okay, the second question. If we see a mix of baby and adult teeth, does that mean the child is under 3 years, it's an adult, or it's 6 to 12 years old?
Option C.
6 to 12.
Exactly, excellent. The third one, if wisdom teeth are forming, does that mean it's late teenager, 6 to 12, or child under 6?
Late teenagers.
Exactly, excellent, guys. So now that we have finished when it comes to the dentition, we have another thing that we look at, which is the cranial suture fusion. It's one of the first thing also that we look at because how the skull bones they fuse together as the child grow. Babies don't have a fully solid skull. Instead, the skull has these soft areas that is called fontanelles and lines that called sutures, as you can see in here. So what are fontanelles? They are soft spots on a baby head, and these exist because the skull bone haven't fused yet. And it allows the baby head to be more flexible, like during the childbirth, and give space for the brain to grow. So We have, for example, the anterior fontanelle in here. This is the famous spot parents always talk about. It actually closes around 18 months. In here, we have the posterior one, the posterior fontanelle. It closes very early. It's the first one to close. It's about 1.5 to 2 months. Then we have the anterolateral and posterolateral one. So I have put them actually into this table so that you can know. The first one to fuse, it's the posterior fontanelle, about 1.5 to 2 months. Then we have the posterolateral that closes at 3 to 5 months. Then the anterolateral fontanelle that closes about 4 to 6 months. And the last one to fuse, it's the anterior fontanelle, which is 18 months. And also I have put for your information the importance and the role of each one, that just for you to know them. So now also a small activity. If the anterior fontanelle is still open, does that mean that the child is more than 18 months, is less than 18 months, is more than 2 months?
Option B, less than 18 months.
B option.
Exactly. Excellent. Now, if all fontanelles are closed, does that mean that the child is older than 5 years, older than 18 months, or older than 2 years?
B.
Exactly. So, yes. So with that, we are also done with the fontanelles and the cranial thing. We still have the third one that we look at when we are talking about subadults or under 18 years, which is what? The epiphyseal union, basically the end of long bone. It's located at the end of like any long bone, like the femur, tibia, humerus, and clavicle. So because like long bones grow from the ends, these ends are called epiphyses. So in kids and teenagers, the epiphysis is separated from the main shaft, as you can see in here. Okay, so basically we have stages. When it's still a child or a young teen, it's still open. Okay, then when we become mid to late teens, there is this partial union, and as this person become like 18 to 22, like early adult, the fusion is all complete. Okay, so we use in here long bones. So now we're gonna talk about age estimation in adults. You know, when someone reaches adulthood, the bones stop growing. So instead of looking like at the growth, we look at how the bones age over time. Okay, and the best adult indicators come from 3 areas. We have the pelvis, the rib ends, and the clavicle and iliac crest. We're gonna talk about each one. Starting with the pubic symphysis. So I'm gonna show you directly the photos so that you can relate to it. When we're talking about a young adult in here, you can see deep ridges and grooves and bumpy surface. As for the middle age, when you come in here, you can see it's more smooth and more oval. And as we get old, it's more irregular and porous. You can see the difference between 18 years and like 102 years. It's more irregular and porous in here. Then we have something that we call the auricular surface. Basically, this is the auricular surface. It's on the hip bone where it connects the sacrum. And it's called auricular because it looks like an ear-shaped surface, okay? Also, in here, look at this. As it is young, it's more ridged, okay? It's tight. Middle age, let's say more the ridge fade and it's more grainy, you know? And as we get old, it's more flat and porous. You can see the difference in here between 18 years and 102 years, how it has become. We also have the sternal end of the fourth rib. Basically, it's where the rib connects to the chest. You can see in here. And they slowly change from smooth to hollow as we age. How is that? check in here, okay? At 18 years, it's flat and slightly curved. Middle, we have this pit forming. It's thin, and as we get old, you can see it's porous and it has these sharp edges. Okay, so there's the difference between 18 years and 85 years. Look in here. This one for 19 years old and this one from 60 years old. Also, what we look at are the iliac crest and the medial end of the clavicle. As you can see the location, the iliac crest is basically the top edge of the hip bone, and the medial clavicle is like the inner end of the collarbone. Okay, so let's start first with the medial clavicle, medial end of the clavicle, sorry. What we are actually seeing here, you know, in the left image in here, you can see that the bone ends looks rough and uneven, and they are like maybe separated. They are angular, irregular, and incomplete. So basically, it's talking more about early stage. The person was still growing, probably a teenager. In this image, I can see bone ends to appear more round and smooth. There's no visible gap, and it looks very compact and mature. So this means that this person had completed skeletal growth. And just to note, guys, that these two, like the iliac crest and the medial clavicle, we use them because they are the last bones to fuse in the human body when it comes to, like, we're talking about adults of like 20 to 23 years. Okay, is everything clear, guys? Do you have any question? Okay, now we're gonna go to the iliac crest, which is, as we said, related to the hip bone. So in the left image in here, you can clearly see a separated edge or a thin, like, you know, plate of bone. This is the epiphysis that we talked about. It hasn't like fused completely, and there's like a visible gap or line. So it means that this person is likely a teenager, it's still growing and not fully mature. In the right image in here, we can see that the epiphyseal edge is fused. The surface is more smoother and continuous. There's no like clear separation line. So basically this means that the person had finished the skeletal growth and most probably in their early 20s or maybe older. So when we estimate age, guys, before we go into the stature, when we estimate age, we read the growth story written in the bones. In children, we see these rapid changes, new teeth erupting, bone end fusing, skull sutures closing. But in adults, we see slow aging, surface smoothing, joints wearing down, rib ends become more hollow. So together, these clues, they help us to place the individual into an age range. Again, we cannot say the exact age. Does anyone have any question before we go through the stature? Okay. So we identified sex and age. Now the next part of the biological profile is to estimate the stature, which means how tall the person was when they were alive. What is a stature? Basically, it means height. Bones, especially long bones, they grow in length as we grow taller. So by measuring certain bones, we can estimate the person's height. Which bones do we measure? We focus mainly, as I said, on long bones because they are most strongly related to height. We have the femur, the tibia, the humerus, radius, ulna, fibula, all of these. So how do we measure these bones? Look at this. So we use two common tools, as you can see in here. And I already mentioned them. We have the osteometric board, okay? And we use to measure like the maximum length of the bone. The bone is actually placed between these two fixed ends, just like you're measuring, for example, a plank of wood, and you like give the measurement in millimeter. And then we have like the sliding or spreading calipers. They are used for smaller bones or when the bones are more curved. They are very precise for like taking head measurements, and they can be used when only like fragments are available. So what we do is that we use formulas to estimate the height, and after the measuring is done, we use scientific formulas developed from studying thousands of known skeletons. So basically what we have in here, for example, are like some data that was collected before and made as a rule to like measure people, and to like we can use them as reference, okay? Because as I said, we get the measurement, we put them into some kind of formulas, and then we compare them. And these formulas depend on the bone measured, on the sex of the individual. As you can see, like in here, and the ancestry, we have in here Caucasian male, and here Caucasian female, and each bone, as you can see in the table. Now, if, for example, bones are broken or missing, even if the bone is incomplete, we can still estimate the missing part and calculate the height, because a partial femur or a partial humerus still give us useful data. But the more bones present, the more accurate we have the final height estimated. And when we have, of course, multiple long bones, we compare all the results and use the average range. Now we're gonna talk about ancestry. First thing, I would like to state the difference between the two terms, race and ancestry, before we start, because they're not the same thing. Race basically is a social concept. It's based on the appearance, like skin color, hair type, but it's not scientific. And it changes across the culture and history, and it cannot be determined from the bones. However, ancestry is the biological concept. It's based on inherited skeletal features. It can be studied scientifically, and it can be determined from bones using measurement and some traits. So ancestry is biological, but race is social, and bones do not show race, they show ancestry patterns. Now, what is ancestry determination? When we talk about ancestry in forensic anthropology, we mean identify the biological population group an individual belongs to based on the skeletal traits. We commonly use three large population clusters, which are the Caucasoid, that refer to the European and Middle Eastern, Negroid, that refer to the African origins, and the Mongoloid, that refers to the Asian, indigenous, and Native Americans. And these are not races, they are biological patterns, groups used to help identify unknown human remains. So how do we actually determine, ancestry from the skull? Bones, especially the skull, have a small but very consistent difference across the population. So we can use some traits, non-metric traits, as we mentioned before, when we look at the shape of the skull, and we can use metric ones when we use calipers and formulas to measure specific distances and angles. Now, when it comes to the metric method, first thing first, I would like to talk about the cranial vault shape. This is the cranial vault shape, okay? You can obviously see the difference between, for example, the Caucasoid European in here. It's high and narrow. For the Negroid, it's more long and low. And for the Mongoloid Asian, it's round and wide. I also put for a female and a male so that you can see the difference. As for example, the nasal aperture, you can see the difference between European, Asian, and African. For the European, it's narrow and tall nose opening. For the Asian one, or the Mongoloid one, it's medium width and it's more rounded. And when it comes to the African or Negroid, we have a wide and round nose opening. Same things goes for the eye orbits, as you can see in here. For European, it's more angular. For Asian or indigenous, it's more round, circular orbits. And for African, it's more of a rectangular or square shaped orbits. Also, you can look in here at the zygomatic arc or the cheekbones. For European, it's less pronounced. Look at the difference between the European, is Asian, and African. Look at the African. Sorry, it's very prominent and very projecting outward. For sorry, it's moderately pronounced. For in here, you can say that it's less pronounced. Okay. Then we have the palate shape and the dentition. So you can see for the African, it's a wide U shape. For European, it's more of a V shape, right? And for the Asian, it's rounded only. And as for the teeth and jaw, you know, European usually have small jaws, okay? They have narrow dental arc. The African, they have larger jaws. And the Asian, they have like shovel-shaped incisors. They take it like that, like it's like a shovel, okay? So how do we actually confirm everything? Okay, in here I have put this table also for you so that you can have all the comparison between the three population that we talked about, the Caucasoid, Negroid, and Mongoloid, the difference between the cranial vault, eye orbits, nasal opening, zygomatic bones, and jaw and teeth, so that you can refer actually to them as when we're talking about non-metric. But now, how can actually anthropologists confirm the ancestry? So we said they use the non-metric and they use the metric method, okay? Like calipers. And they also can use some kind of softwares that will help them because, you know, as everything is becoming more advanced, they have these data that is entered in some kind of software. So they enter the measurements that they found, and based on the software that they have, they can get the results, or very like not accurate, but like that will help them to narrow down and know more about the ancestry and about everything that they found. Of course, I have put this slide just to remind you that in the recovery of the bones, it's very important to note that it is handled just like any other evidence handled when it comes to the photography, the documentation, the mapping, the usage of brushes and gloves, the PPE. When we collect the bones, we should be very careful and we should avoid any contamination. And of course, the labeling and the transport properly, the chain of custody, we should maintain it, everything. It is just like any other evidence found at any crime scene. So now, before we end our session, this is the last thing that we're gonna talk about today, which is the bite marks. So, you know, we focused on what skeletal remains can tell us about identity, like sex, age, stature, and biological profile, but in real forensic casework, investigators can also examine other forms of evidence that may reflect contact between people. And one of them is the bite mark analysis, which belong more to forensic odontology than forensic anthropology. But it's useful to mention because it shows how different forensic specialties can actually work together to reconstruct these events. So basically, a bite mark is a pattern injury produced when teeth are pressed against or penetrate tissue. So in forensic work, we often describe it as a double arc pattern because the upper and lower teeth may have each leave an arc-shaped impression, as you can see in the picture. And it actually depends on the force used. The mark may appear as a bruise, abrasion. We have many actually types when it comes to them, but I'm not gonna very deep dive into it because it really needs a lot of time to explain it. But what you should know is that what makes bite marks relevant in forensic investigation is not only the injury itself, but it's the fact that it reflects a direct interaction between like two people. For example, in a violent assault, a bite mark on the arm, on the shoulder, on the face, they all may suggest some kind of a struggle, anger, defensive action. And in some cases, they can show that there was, intimate or aggression, physical contact. So the most important point is that bite marks, they are not, you should know, they are not mainly used the way bones are used. Bones usually help us build the biological profile of the deceased. Bite marks, on the other hand, they may help investigators to understand the circumstances between the victim and the offender. And so, as an example, I already gave you like a victim can be having a kind of this injury on the arms. So investigators are gonna ask like, was the victim trying to defend itself? Was the offender restraining them? Was the injury produced during the assault itself, during the crime, or after it? So even before like talking about suspect comparison, the bite mark can already have some contextual values. And this more aligned with, as I said, forensic ontology role, which is in assault and domestic violence, rape, and homicides. Okay? Now, as we mentioned, the forensic value of bite marks, it comes from two main areas. First is it is a pattern injury. So investigators, they document the shape, the size, the arc form, the spacing, and like the general appearance of the mark. So historically, forensic odontologists, they try to compare these visible features with suspect dentition. For example, unusual spacing between the bites. Like in the bite, we have this unusual spacing, or we have like a missing teeth, or some kind of thing that would make us to compare. The second thing is that, which is more important today, is a bite site may contain saliva, which can be swapped for DNA. So in modern forensic practice, DNA from saliva can be more persuasive than the visual pattern comparison alone. So when we talk about forensic value, we should not make it sound like bite marks can actually identify a suspect by themselves. It's a better and more careful way to phrase it is that they may support an investigation, help associate or maybe exclude a person, and sometimes they provide biological material for, as we said, DNA testing. Of course, there are some limitations and scientific cautions. So this is the most important one that you should know, because unlike bone, skin is not hard or stable. It is more elastic, so it stretches, it swells, and we can have bruises, and it may change over the time. It actually changes over the time. So this means that even if someone did bite the skin, the visible mark may not preserve the exact shape of the teeth. So the appearance can also be affected by body position, the movement during the bite, the healing, the pressure, even the photography angle, and the post-injury changes that can happen. So this is why bite mark interpretation has become like very controversial in the forensic science, because major scientific reviews have raised this concern about whether the key assumption behind forensic bite mark analysis is actually sufficient data. They concluded that forensic bite marks analytics lack this scientific foundation, and they had these concerns that dental patterns have not been shown to be unique at the individual level in the same way the field historically claimed. Like, we know that everyone has its own thing, but it cannot appear because, as we said, like, the skin is elastic. Like, I'm gonna give you an example just to make it more like you can understand it more. Imagine you are walking, okay, with your shoes, and you step into wet sand, okay? The print may already be imperfect, like if you step in a wet sand. Can you imagine that the skin is even less stable than the wet sand? So what we see on the body may only be a distorted version of the original contact. So just to sum up everything, bite marks are a form of patterned injury that can help document contact and support an investigation. But of course, unlike skeletal analysis, they require careful interpretation because the recording surface, which is the skin, is very unstable. And that's it, guys. So I want to tell you that bones, they usually give us more stable biological history. And as we said, that bite marks may contribute to the behavioral history more. I don't have, I didn't really prepare any case studies for this because what I'm planning to do is that I'm gonna send you some links from YouTube that you're gonna watch. These links of these videos are actually real case studies where forensic anthropologists, based on the bone remains they found, actually helped into first identify a missing person. Like, can you imagine you having a skull, just a skull? They were able to put down a face based on some features. And after that, they put the photo that they had into newspaper. And some girl recognized, and she said, like, yeah, this is my friend, and she was missing. And she helped them. So they opened the investigation. It was a cold case. It was a missing person from like 2 years. They opened an investigation and they caught the person who actually murdered her, and they got the whole thing. So I'm gonna send you 3 videos regarding cases similar to this so that you can watch. And of course, as I said, I'm gonna prepare a document related to the bloodstain pattern analysis that I'm gonna send it to you for you to keep it in your reference. Basically, that's it. If you have any doubt or any question, please don't hesitate to ask me now. And I will provide you with my email and LinkedIn if you'd like to connect and talk about anything. I'll be more than happy to help. I really wish that you had like these sessions were actually useful. And right now, I just want to ask you if you have anything that you'd like to know more about.
The meeting is now open to Q&A session. Kindly put your questions in the chat box or raise your hands and unmute yourself to ask your questions.
Okay, I want to ask you actually a question. Do you think that the information that was provided like in today's session or yesterday's, do you had a background on it? Like, have you took courses before? Like, do you think they are more useful? Do you think that we should maybe in the upcoming sessions talk specifically about things more than the others? Can you give me your feedback because it really matters? Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you well.
Okay, great. So I just asked you if you can give us like a feedback about everything because, okay, poor boy saying I personally found all the information I do. Okay. Thank you, guys. It really means a lot. And, you know, the purpose of everything that we're doing is that we'd like all the students and everyone to get to know more about forensic science fields because, as you know, it's a huge like major. It's a huge field, and it has so many branches, if I may say. So I personally, when it comes to forensic, I usually prefer like forensic psychology. I prefer BPA, the one that I talked about, and anthropology. I found them very interesting. But of course, if you have like any suggestion, we can, we can work on this and make it happen. Mainly the pictures with respect to each other will help learn more thoroughly. Yeah. Yeah, I do believe that when we provide more pictures, it's more that, you can see them and actually try to understand them more, especially that we're having these online sessions. It's not like, live. So if you don't have any question, guys, I would like to thank each one of you for attending this session and for being such an engaging, like for all of you being engaging. It's my pleasure and it's my honor to have you all. And I really wish you all well and all the success and keep going and keep learning more about forensics if you love it. Don't let anyone tell you that, oh, you're not going anywhere, because you are and you will. And you should never stop learning because it's a huge field. And as we're growing, we're getting more advanced into this field. So thank you, each one of you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. As we sign off, remember, flesh may fade, and blood may fade, but the signs we leave behind ensures that no story is ever truly erased. We have spent 2 days analyzing the physics of fluid and the endurance of bone. Now it's your turn to take these fragments of knowledge and build a career of integrity. The convergence ends here, but your investigation is just beginning. Our deepest gratitude goes to our speaker, Ms. Alaa El Sheikh. Thank you for sharing your profound expertise and for guiding us through the complexities of blood, bones, and bite marks with such clarity and passion. Thank you for your participation, asking your brilliant questions, and for joining us from all the corners of the world to keep the spirit of forensic science alive. It is your dedication to the truth that makes sessions like these so meaningful. Thank you so much, guys.